This episode contains material that might be triggering for some. If you need to stop the podcast at any time to take care of yourself, please do so.
If you need support, you can call the 24/7 National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to what Michelle and I just figured out is our 8th Q&A episode. So, welcome. 8th. Lucky number 8? I don't know.
Why not?
Why not, right? Why? We need some luck, and we'll just decide that things can be lucky right now.
This is true with the current state of the world.
I know, right? So, anyway, welcome. We've got several, I feel like, things to tackle in this one. So, Michelle, I think you are up first.
I am up first. So, this is an email that we got from a listener, and this listener says, "Hi, Kate and Michelle. Just a note of thanks. I found your podcast when my 13-year-old trans son was at an RTC. RTC stands for Residential Treatment Center. In California this summer after 2 suicide attempts, one in the hospital, and a lot of self-harm. He was doing an in-person DBT group, which was recommended after a hospitalization last summer after a previous suicide attempt, but it stopped due to the pandemic. Then school stopped also, and things spiraled downward quickly. I've been doing an online parent DBT group through the RTC, but it's been pretty rushed and not that great, so I was looking for more resources. I want to learn DBT skills myself so I can use them and model them for him. My own anxiety isn't doing great right now. Pandemic, plus kid in hospital, plus wildfires. My dad died a few weeks ago, and I had a couple of minor operations as well. Fun times. Say. I didn't mean to tell you the whole story, except that I wanted to explain that the folks at the RTC made the point of telling us that a dysregulated nervous system cannot regulate another dysregulated nervous system. So I'm doing what I can to regulate my own nervous system. And your podcast is helping. You explain DBT in a way I understand. I hate all the acronyms. My brain does not remember them. Didn't Marsha understand that anxious and stressed brains don't remember what the bloody acronyms stand for? I love it. Do you have an episode explaining diary cards? There are so many templates. My son likes the rainbow diary card. I'd like to track what skills I'm using. Although until I learn the skills and the damn acronyms, I don't know if I'm using them. And what do I do with them once the week is up? Do I recycle them, 3-hole punch them, and put them in a binder to keep forever? Question mark. So yeah, that's the email. So what are your thoughts, Kate?
Well, first of all, I'm so with you on the damned acronyms.
Right?
By the way, I've been looking, Michelle, and I'm pretty sure it's 5 years that we've been doing this together, because that's when I talk about, like, I think today I just had a memory show up that said, my first week at 410s, which means I was just starting at our office then. Mm-hmm. So about 5 years we've been doing it. And before we teach it, Michelle and I will still have to sit down and be like, all right, this stands for that, and this stands for the other thing. Yes. We have like 5 years of teaching, and we still need to like rack our brains. So anyway, I'm just so with you there. But that's neither here nor there about diary cards. Well, neither is the other thing I want to start off with, which is good job parenting in a really hard situation and trying to lead by example. I'm always so impressed when family members or spouses or parents or other people choose to go through learning DBT as a way to support and or model stuff for someone else in their life who is struggling. So I'm just double thumbs up there. I'm glad and or hopeful. I think you said it's helpful for you too. So I don't know. Good job. Good job, parent.
Yep.
Now for diary cards, I would not keep them in a binder forever. nor do we generally, I mean, I guess they're technically in our binders that we give to our clients for our actual DBT groups, but I really see them as something that is just there for you in the moment that you need it. You talk about wanting to track the skills, and I think that's exactly what it's for, right? And because it is so much for you, and in your case in particular, because you're not part of necessarily a formal group, where, as far as I know, every DBT program that I've ever heard of has kind of their own diary card version. Do with it what you need to for the moment, right? Simplify it to what you need. If you want to just create a diary card per skill as you're wanting to hone that skill, that would seem fine to me. If you want to make it the, 3 skills that you're working on the hardest or that you think are the most important, whatever, right? I guess I'm just a big proponent of creating and or modifying diary cards to be what is going to serve you best in what you're hoping to accomplish. So I think, yeah. Michelle, were you going to talk about ours, if I recall correctly?
Yeah. Yeah, to build off of what you said, I think it's true that a lot of different DBT programs develop their own diary card and they modify maybe a diary card template to make it work for what they are teaching and for their group participants. So Kate and I modified and created basically our own diary card a few years back because we thought that the original diary card template that I inherited when I first started teaching the groups, and then Kate joined me shortly after, but that template just seemed really extensive and overwhelming and too much.
They're just busy. They seem busy to me.
Very busy. So Kate and I made our own diary card. So I'll probably try to figure out a way to post this in the group. I am going to post an online link that I found that had about 5 different diary card templates. So you can look at them. They're all pretty intense. But you can go and look if you want to. So the way that Kate and I have modified our diary card is that at the top of the page, we have 3 questions that we have people answer. The first question is, what was your major life event this week? And major is a relative term. Basically, what's something that happened that stood out to you? It doesn't have to be anything life-changing or earth-shattering, but what was something that happened in your week that seemed significant? So we have our participants write in a couple sentences about what their life event was. The second question asks, what emotions did you feel when that life event was occurring? And then the third question asks, what skills were helpful for you with this life event? So when we do our groups, every group at the beginning of it, for about 30 minutes or so, we have each person go around and share what they wrote down for those 3 questions.
30 minutes total, not 30 minutes per person.
No. We'd be there forever. Everyone gets about, 3 or 4 minutes to talk about their diary card. And then we start to form this grid at the bottom of the diary card, which at the top for the columns is the days of the week. And for the rows, it lists each skill that we've taught up until that point. So it forms this grid where you're writing down what skill you use for what day of the week. And we have people put in one of 3 letter choices. So either a T, an A, or an S. So the T stands for I thought about the skill, the A stands for I attempted the skill, and the S stands for I successfully used the skill. So we encourage them to track and see in that way what skills are they using successfully, what skills are they thinking about, and maybe where could they put forth more effort into thinking about or using some skills that maybe they haven't been thinking about or attempting to use as much. So that's what our diary card looks like, but every diary card is unique and different. And Kate also said this pretty well, the main purpose of it is just to keep the skills fresh in your mind, to keep you thinking about the skills, because DBT doesn't work if you attend your group each week and then the minute you leave group and it's over, you don't think about DBT skills again until your next group. in the following week. It won't work. You won't really learn the skills. They won't really stick for you. You have to practice them in order for this to be something that you start using and implementing. So that's really the purpose of the diary card, is to keep you thinking about the skills in between groups, and is not meant to be a shame tool for you to look at it. Yeah. Like, we don't want it to be that our participants look at their diary cards and go, oh, I've only been practicing 1 skill out of 10 this week. You know, I'm not doing enough. No. It's purely just to give you information for your own purposes. And we also really don't want diary cards to be overwhelming. That's part of why we simplified ours, because we see a lot of diary cards that look overwhelming and feel really overwhelming to participants. So with the link that I am going to post in the Facebook group, like, take a look at it. But a lot of diary cards have different boxes, you could say. And so you can pick, you know, which box you want to focus on. Like, some of them have a box just about self-harm, and some of them have just a box about emotions, and some of them, you know, so you can, like, really, really make it your own. That's how we view diary cards.
I like it. All right, on to the next one?
Next one, yeah.
All right. So this, was this an email?
No, this was a post in the Facebook group.
Right, okay.
A long time ago, this slipped through the cracks.
Oh, no, that's right.
My apologies, listener.
To make it in a couple ago. We're sorry.
We're going to answer it now. I apologize for not putting it in an earlier Q&A episode like I told you I would. Here we go.
All right. So, I have found DBT to be helpful in healing a lot of behaviors that are not helpful. My wife has also used DBT, but says she doesn't like it. Her therapist has asked her to go back to it, which upset her. She had a serious suicide attempt back in February. I have encouraged her to take a second look, and maybe she was right. Some things are not helpful to her. However, to instead focus on the parts of DBT that do work. My question is, can you take what works with DBT and not focus on the rest, or modify the rest to work for you, and it still be effective?
This will probably come as no surprise to the people who have been listening to us from the beginning, especially this far into things. Kate and I wholeheartedly say yes. You can absolutely modify DBT. You can absolutely pick and choose what skills work for you and to decide to not focus on some other skills. So yes is the short answer. And the reason why I think I so adamantly say yes to that is because DBT has a shit ton of skills. A shit ton. And you can't, well, I don't want to say you can't, maybe some people can, but it is incredibly difficult to juggle and manage all of the skills and to be trying to implement them all at once perfectly.
Yep.
It's going to be a struggle. It really is important to pick and choose, you know, maybe your top 2 to 3 of, like, these are the ones I really need. And to spend your time and energy working on those, and to discard the rest, at least temporarily, until you get those 2 to 3 down and you feel more confident. And generally speaking, Kate and I tend to always recommend starting with Wise Mind and Mindfulness. Focus your energy there. Get those skills down, and then you can move on to others. But there may be certain skills that you really need for things you're struggling with in your life, and there may be other skills that don't apply to what you're struggling with in your life. So it is totally recommended by us anyways. I don't know by other people who teach DBT, but, like, you can modify it. Because, you know, you mentioned that your wife really didn't like DBT the first time around. This is not uncommon. A lot of people have that reaction. They're like, what is this? I hate this. And then they go back to it the second or the third time and they're like, okay, this isn't so bad. So that's not uncommon, but I think a lot of reason why people have that initial response to DBT is because it's so much. It's so much. And I think they feel like they have to do it perfectly by the book or else. And we're here to tell you, you don't have to. So those are my thoughts.
It's funny, I find, so I just to balance it out a little bit, I pretty much agree with everything Michelle said. Like she was saying that everybody who listens to us hears us talk about things like, I don't know, I will say flat out things like skills and stuff that I don't like, that I don't find very useful for myself, or rub me the wrong way for some reason or another.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we all have preferences.
Especially like parts of skills, like the long acronyms like improve or accepts or things like that. On the other hand, I think it needs to be balanced, right? So DBT is meant to function as a system, right? As a network or as a, system. That's the best word I can think of for it at the moment, right? Where it's not just isolated skills. They are meant to be like a web, right? Where they're a bit interconnected and they support each other, right? It's one of the reasons why, if you have access to any of the books or the handouts or things, you'll often see skills referencing other skills and how to do them, right? Like, before you do this skill, make sure you're in your wise mind, right? Like, they will reference each other because they do build upon each other in a way that the more of them you know, the better you understand other ones, right? They have this sort of interconnectedness. They're not meant to just be one-off kind of isolated skills. So, can they be modified? Can you kind of take or leave it to an extent? Abso-fucking-lutely. And don't go too far with that. I don't know. Now I'm backtracking from my own thing. Like, you can go full bore that direction. I would just argue that at some point you're not doing DBT. Like, at that point, you are just finding some tools that you like. You're not, like, doing or practicing DBT as a theory or as a system or as a practice. So that's I guess what I would say lies at the far end. If you're really, really just throwing out most of it and cherry picking a few things that you like, go for it. And if they're helpful, awesome. I'm like, yes, double thumbs up. And also at that point, I don't think you're doing DBT. So, do you have to do absolutely every single one of them as written, as ordered, gung-ho, no holds barred? No. God, no. But if you go too far, you're eventually just leaving DBT. So I guess that's kind of my thoughts. Strike a balance. And I think that somewhere in that balance is the way that DBT becomes most effective for people.
Yes. Good thoughts, Kate.
Thanks.
This was a post in our Facebook group. So this post reads, I would like to ask how you understand the statement, life worth living. I can't understand the deep meaning of it. If my life is worth living because of DBT skills, what was it like before I started therapy?
Man, somebody just tell you, this question appeals so deeply to the philosophy major in me that I'm gonna have to keep it brief. I don't know if I mentioned that before. For everyone who's wondering, my undergraduate degree was in philosophy. So, man, do I like questions like, what constitutes a life worth living? I actually had an entire class that was just that question. That was the entire thing. Anyway, I will try not to go on a 3-month lecture. No. What do I think? First one is that it's deeply personal. I don't think that there is a universal answer to what is a life worth living. I don't think... In fact, I'm not sure any two people strictly agree on what constitutes the answer to that question. For me, there's a couple of different things to think about. I do think there's a spectrum from like worth living to thriving. I do think of worth living as being kind of for me, right? Again, like I said, deeply, deeply personal. For me, worth living is kind of the bottom rung. Right, the bare minimum, right? We need a life that is worth continuing to live before we can get anywhere else, right? Before we can hope to strive for thriving. And on my end, what I always think of as constituting a life worth living is, am I capable of learning? That's the thing for me. Can I take in and assimilate new information? If that ever stops being the case, I feel pretty done. But that's because I'm very focused on my mind, right? So if I am completely bedridden and unable to do anything for myself physically, but I can still read, I can still, listen, I can still learn, that to me still constitutes a life worth living. But for instance, my sister, who is an incredibly athletic person, I think that she might think of physical mobility and something as playing a much higher much bigger role in whether or not her life feels worth living to her. So I think the answer to that question is impossible for me to guess at for you, listener, because it's gonna rest so deeply in your own values. And those are unique to you. But to answer your question as it relates kind of to DBT skills, I don't think DBT in and of itself is capable of just by itself creating a life worth living. But I do think it can help very many people. It can help people survive. It can be a part of the foundation for a life worth living, and can even help people go from, just survival to thriving, right? These are skills that can be applied to help improve your life in the ways that matter to you, right? Depending on what your values are. You can almost look at it also as, in the different modules, they kind of address different values or different aspects of your personal life. So if interpersonal relationships is the thing that is the most important to you for your life feeling like you're thriving or feeling worth living, then maybe that's the stuff that you focus on the most, and that's how it most helps you improve your life. Whereas if emotions are bigger, et cetera, right? You can apply it and find a way to help it push your life closer and closer to this idea of thriving rather than just surviving. But there's no one path, right? To getting to this destination, because there's no one destination. So only you can say if your life met the criteria of being worth living before DBT. I don't know your story enough, and I don't know what your criteria is. But yeah, I guess I would say that DBT is a tool, but it is not enough to make a life seem worth living to me. My personal stuff. What about your thoughts, Michelle?
Whew. Tough act to follow, Kate. Your thoughts were so good.
I'm verbose.
Hey, I like it. I can be very verbose myself. So, I think it's something where DBT talked about this idea within the ABC skill of like accumulating positive emotions and having like short-term and long-term and that kind of a thing. And DBT really talks about that how you build a life worth living is building a life that's in line with your values. And Kate, you touched on that a little bit in your response too. And for me, I think that's really what a lot of this boils down to. Our values can be like our North Star, you could say, the thing that guides us, the thing that keeps us going when we're dealing with the stresses of daily living, or when something big comes along in life that's really hard to manage. Our values can keep us on course, on track, and give us a sense of meaning in our lives. And there's tons of stuff out there about values assessments. DBT has its own list of values that I think I posted in the Facebook group back when we did talk about the ABC skill. But if you just look up, what are my values, you'll find lots of things to help you with that. And I can tell Kate has something she wants to say. Go for it, Kate.
I didn't think about it when I was doing it, but you talking about values made me think about it. I think everybody pretty much ever ought to read Viktor Frankl's
Man's Search for Meaning.
Man's Search for Meaning, yeah. And I think it touches on this so beautifully. Like, it just encompasses the answer, quote unquote, to this question in a lot of ways, right? Because meaning is a lot of where he talks about finding a life worth living. Anyway, I just thought it was on point, and I highly recommend the book anyway. So thank you for remembering the name in that moment that my brain decided to blank when I was about to say it. Yeah, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning is wonderful. It's also it's not a very big book, so it's very tackleable. Anyway, awesome. Sorry.
That's great.
Keep going.
Good resource. Yeah, because it really is figuring out, what is most important to you. And how does that guide your life? And how are you making choices in your life that bring you closer to what's important to you? Or are you making choices in your life that are taking you further from what's important to you? And how can you adjust, if that's the case, to start surrounding yourself with people and memories and events that are in line with what you value? So there's lots of tools out there to help you figure out what your values are. And someone else also commented on this thread from this original post this morning, and I really liked what this person said, which is really that I had mentioned something too in the post about like, life can be worth living even though it has hardships. Life is hard for everyone at various points in time. It's part of being human. That's part of living. We experience stresses. We experience loss. We experience hardships in various forms. And that the person pointed out really nicely that that's a dialectic. Mm-hmm. Life can be worth living and it has hardships. And that, I think, can be so important to remember. And it can be something that we can easily lose sight of, especially when we're experiencing a really big, major, unexpected hardship, is that life itself can still be worth living. And life can still be good even when we're dealing with something really difficult and painful. Figuring that out is really hard, which is why I like that you referenced the book, Kate, because for people who don't know much about Viktor Frankl, he was in a concentration camp. So how do you find any kind of good in that experience?
Yep.
That's about as challenging as it can get. So there can be a lot of inspiration there, and thinking about other people, whether it's people you know personally in your life, or maybe people who are, I don't want to use the word famous, that implies like some kind of celebrity, but just people you maybe admire who are doing good in the world, and looking at how they're creating a life worth living. And you don't have to set the bar super high for yourself, but figuring out how you can start taking some action that gets you closer to your values is, in my opinion, how we create a life worth living. So, but yeah, I'm with you, Kate. We could keep talking about this.
Right? Endlessly. It was, I know, I will move forward, but I just think it's hilarious because that class that I was talking about, like, I think it was like what is a good life? I think that was actually how they phrased it. But the only things you were, other than class participation, the only thing you were graded on was you wrote the same paper twice. At the very beginning, without having gone over or read anything, it was just write a paper. What constitutes a good life? Go through the entire course with all of the reading and all of the in-the-class debates and all of the everything, and at the end of the quarter, you again write a paper of what constitutes a good life.
I love that.
To see how has it evolved, how has it changed, what about your opinions, metamorphosed, what didn't, and anyway, I love that class. It was great.
I wish I could have taken that class with you.
It was awesome.
I think I would have loved it, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so on to the last one? Are we on our last one?
It is the last one, yeah.
All right. This was also a post in our Facebook group. So it says, I am currently at the end of my first round of DBT with my therapist. Is it normal to feel a sense of loss at the end? I know that I've made a lot of progress and that things have to move forward, but I am both scared and sad. Am I the only one to feel this way?
Yeah, you are certainly not alone, listener. Kate and I I can't even do the math of how many groups we've led, right? So if
roughly
for
3
5
a year
years,
for 5 years. What is that?
Yeah, so it's about 15 modules,
Yep.
roughly. So we've had a lot of endings with various people in a group setting. I am pretty sure I mentioned this in a previous episode. I've gone through a few different group therapy experiences myself, even though they were not DBT. One of them spanned the course of several months and involved like staying the weekends with these people. So, group therapy really is very impactful. And also, even if, you mentioned this is the first round of DBT with my therapist, so maybe you were doing individual DBT, but regardless of whether it's a group experience ending or an experience just you and that therapist ending, it's completely natural and normal to feel a sense of loss. And you also identified that you feel both scared and sad. And fear is so common with endings because it really does bring up this question of what's next and how am I going to do without this support? And, will I ever see this person or these people again and how that's going to feel? So scared and sad. Yep, you hit the nail on the head with those two emotions going hand in hand around endings. And something that may be helpful, it may apply or it may not, is that I've more and more started to see as I've had times in my life where I think, I'm never going to see that person again, or I'm never going to go back to that place again. You may be surprised how life can twist and turn so that paths do wind up crossing again, or that there are some ways to maintain contact, even if it looks different in the future. Kate and I have had it with many DBT groups where people stay friends afterwards. They exchange phone numbers and then they meet up and, see each other, either specifically because they want to try to create their own little DBT type of group, or just purely to socialize and have fun. But they form friendships and bonds that persist even after the group experience ends. And so chances are there may be some ways that you can maintain contact, even if it is just asking your therapist, can I, send you an email every 6 months or every year just to let you know how I'm doing? Is that okay? Or that kind of a thing. I imagine most therapists would say that's fine.
Yeah.
So figuring out how to maintain some kind of contact and connection can help ease the ending, because it doesn't feel so final. So those are things you can explore if you'd like, and also exploring if there are other sources of support that you can find too, moving forward, a different type of experience so that you can still feel connected in some way to what you have learned, or again, if it is a group experience, who you've met and that kind of a thing. There are options out there so that it doesn't have to feel so final.
All of that. No, no, you're definitely not the only one, right? It's one of the things you say. As Michelle was pointing it, we've had a lot of groups and and I'd say it's not rare to have people crying on the last night of group, right? Just because group has helped them feel so not alone, and not weird, right? Not isolated. And so that's been a big thing. And, and I think one of the things, especially with groups, but also on one-on-one, because when I first did I guess the only time I did DBT as a client, I was part of a group, and I had an individual DBT therapist, and it's just so, I don't know, it has such a scaffolding, right? Like DBT is because of how formal it is, because of how structured it is, I think it can build this really lovely sense of support. And even though you talk about knowing you've made a lot of progress, right? So it's obviously you've learned these skills and incorporated them and, internalized them, still to lose that external, scaffolding around those skills can feel really scary, and can feel, like you lose some of your strength, or like there's a gap or a hole in your life where this thing used to be. Like Michelle was talking about, it can help to try and stay in contact or find other support around it, right? There's a lot of, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of DBT groups on various websites, right? Facebook or Reddit or other things, where if you just want to connect to other people who are still practicing and learning the skills around it, that's a thing that you could do. And also, like, looking back at your own accomplishments, right? I think part of the fear can come up with oh God, now that I'm not doing this with a group, now I'm not doing it with a therapist, am I going to forget everything? Am I going to slide right back into what I was doing? Right. And so taking some time to congratulate yourself, to appreciate what you've accomplished, and really solidify, like, you know what, I've got this. I can do this, right? My therapist wouldn't be saying this was done, or I wouldn't be graduating from the program, or I wouldn't, whatever, if I weren't ready, right, to sort of launch on my own on this. So hopefully that's some thoughts that are helpful for you.
Yeah,
but
great.
Yeah, I think that's what I got.
All right, perfect. So to wrap up, we're just going to leave you guys with our email address and ask that you keep the emails coming so we can keep doing Q&A episodes for you guys. So DBT Me Podcast at gmail.com, or like lots of listeners have done, if you are part of our Facebook group, and if you do feel comfortable posting publicly a question that you have or something that you're going through, absolutely do it there, because then you don't just get some feedback from Kate or I, you can also get feedback from other people in the group who can have fantastic things to say. So either emailing us at dbtmepodcast at gmail, or posting in the Facebook group.
Which is closed, right? I know you said public, but only sort of public.
Yeah. It's a private Facebook group. So yes, you're
Semi-public?
yeah, like the people within the group will be able to see what you post.
I'm being so nitpicky. I'm sorry.
No, it's important because we have had questions about that in the past, and your Facebook friends cannot see what you post in that group. So the people within the group can see it. So if you want to keep it super private, we recommend emailing us so then just Kate and I see it and we can protect your confidentiality and your name and all of that. But you can also post it in the Facebook group if you're comfortable with the other group members seeing what you have to say.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Great.
All right,
Bye. We'll see you guys next time. To learn more about us and the DBT skills we're teaching each week, join our Facebook group. Simply log in to your Facebook profile and search for